Welcome to the YMCA of San Francisco's Classrooms for All. My name is Reesha, and today we are going to be learning about carbon cycling and making your very own carbon footprint journal. What does that mean, carbon cycling? In honor of Climate Action Month, we are about to find out. So some of us might have heard of carbon because we're familiar with the periodic table, or we've heard of carbon dioxide. When we breathe in and breathe out, we have carbon dioxide that leaves us. And that carbon dioxide is a part of the story that we're going to tell today, and about our connection to land and the planet. And as we think about the ways that we're connected to this land and our planet, let's also take a moment to recognize the people for whom this land is sacred. And I'm talking about the Ohlone people, and the reason that I'm mentioning this is because I am currently in San Francisco, which means I'm in unceded territory. That means it was forcibly taken, often with a history of violence associated with that story. And so I want to acknowledge that this land that I'm on right now to talk to you is the indigenous homeland of the Ohlone people. And if you want to find out more about where you are and the people that you can get connected to and give thanks to as a way to connect to your spot on the planet, you can visit native-land.ca. Let's take a breath together in gratitude for this place and the people who have come before us. Thank you. I love taking a moment to breathe in gratitude and breathe out gratitude. And like I said before, this story about climate change and climate action and carbon can connect to our breath, this breath that powers us to think critically, to be creative, to move our bodies and stay healthy. So many things we can do when we learn about carbon. So, like I said before, carbon is one of many different things that you could see when you look at the periodic table. And what's the periodic table but a list of ingredients that make up everything on our planet Earth? We can think of the different elements of the periodic table as being Legos or building blocks. Sometimes they fit together really well, and sometimes there are pieces that don't fit together so well. Then there are pieces that can disconnect from one building block and connect to another. One of those building blocks in our world is called carbon. As carbon moves from one life form to another on this planet, it changes the structure of what it becomes attached to. For example, if I'm eating a salad, the leaves of that salad, the leaves of the lettuce in that salad, are made up of a lot of different things, including carbon. And when I eat and that energy becomes animated in me, that carbon becomes a part of my body. Now, maybe I breathe some of that carbon out with my carbon dioxide. And if there's a plant nearby, maybe it becomes the direct recipient of some of that carbon dioxide. There's also carbon free floating in our air and underground. Some of this carbon is locked up into fossil fuels. And fossil fuels were formed a long time ago, sometimes even millions of years ago, made from decaying carbon-based life forms. Maybe even dinosaurs make up the fossil fuel that's going into powering our buildings or moving our cars. It's amazing to think about how connected we are to the history of this planet when we think about carbon. But some of this carbon has been sitting for a long, long time as fossil fuels. That means that when we start to use it up for our transportation and our energy, it gets released into the atmosphere and cycled quickly. It goes from slow moving, still carbon to being fast moving and rapid moving carbon. Now, this isn't a problem for the planet, but it is a problem for living carbon-based life forms on the planet, like you and me. We're made up of carbon. Other animals are made up of carbon. There's plants that are made up of carbon. And if we want our atmosphere to stay hospitable for living things like us, then we have to be worried about how much carbon is getting cycled into the atmosphere quickly by our use of fossil fuels. So what are we to do? Well, it's helpful to start thinking about our carbon footprint. This is a picture of a foot that I drew on a piece of cardboard. Maybe you have some cardboard in your home too. If you would like to make a carbon footprint journal along with me, you will need some cardboard. You'll need some art supplies. You'll need a pair of scissors. You'll have to be careful with the scissors that you use. Some paper. Maybe it's recycled or already has something written on the back. And something to tie our journal together. So inside this tissue box, I have a lot of twisty ties from the different bunches of vegetables that I get. This will be something helpful that we can use, or rubber bands. You can even use an old shoelace or a ribbon that you find that you'd like to use. So those are the materials we'll need. Cardboard, paper, art supplies, scissors, and something to tie our journal together, like rubber bands or bits of wire or ribbon. Well, one of the things that we can start with is an open mind, thinking creatively as we begin our journal project. You'll notice that I'm already thinking creatively by how I'm reusing something in my home. This came to me as a box of tissues. The paper used for those tissues was taken from trees. That means that the carbon that was locked up inside of those trees as it was growing and building itself became released into the atmosphere. And so I want to make sure that I'm reusing my materials, my paper materials, as much as I can to reduce my carbon footprint. So thinking creatively is a great first step. But let's focus again on what a footprint means. Well, when we're taking a walk outside, maybe even on the beach or someplace where the earth is soft and we can see the marks our feet have left behind, either with a shoe or barefoot, it is a moment for us to notice our impact. Our impact. So when we talk about our footprint on the earth, we're not talking about our actual physical footprint. We're talking about our overall impact on the climate. So when we talk about taking climate action to reduce our carbon footprint, we're talking about taking action to reduce our impact on the climate. So one way we can do that is by keeping track of our use of fossil fuels and energy at home. I live in a place where I can turn on the lights and electricity is activated. I can turn on my faucet and water comes out. I can flush the toilet and water goes down. I can take a shower and water goes down the drain. I have a refrigerator that if I open the door, the light bulb inside turns on. If I leave that refrigerator open, then all of the energy that goes to cooling that food starts to leak out into the room. So I am very familiar with having a lifestyle that uses electricity, fossil fuels, and energy. Those are the things that I'm going to think about when I think about my carbon footprint. So here's what we can do to make our journal to help us keep track. You can see I've already cut some of the lid off of this cardboard box. Maybe you're somebody who's also getting cardboard boxes in your home right now. A lot of people are getting deliveries, and those deliveries come with packaging. So maybe you'll think of another creative way to use the materials that come with your boxes. There's bubble wrap, there's tissue paper, there's all kinds of things that we want to make sure we think twice before adding to our landfills. We don't want to create excess waste when we could be reusing something and reducing our carbon footprint, reducing our negative impact on the climate. So I'm going to use the scissors to cut the cardboard, and I always want to make sure that I'm being careful with my fingers, and getting permission from a grown-up is a good idea because sometimes it's a little tough to cut the cardboard, and I want you to be safe. That's a great reminder. Maybe I'll use this for something later. Okay, we have our 2 pieces of cardboard. They're not the same size, but that's okay. Maybe this will be a really interesting, creative, one-of-a-kind journal. Now, this next part is probably the most challenging. So I want to make sure that I put a hole in the cardboard so that all of my pieces can stay connected. And I'm going to use these scissors, but again, I have to be really careful. So we're going to go slow and pay close attention to what we're doing. So I just poked it through like that. I made sure my hands were not in the way. And then I'm spinning the blade of the scissor to widen the hole, like that. I'll do the same on this one. Looks good. Already doing such a great job. If you need to walk across the room with your scissors, I learned a safe way to do that, thanks to my 1st grade teacher, Mrs. Johnson. You carry your scissors point down, fist around. This is a good, safe way to carry your scissors. Another good reminder that as we think about taking climate action, we need to take care of ourselves so that we are healthy, well, and our very best version of ourselves to take action against impacting our climate in a negative way. So we have our 2 covers for our climate journal. I kind of like that one of them is a different size because it helps me pay close attention to how things are unique. I've never made a journal with different sized covers, but I like it. For one of the covers, you might decide to trace your foot. Oh my goodness, how fun would that be? For this one, I didn't trace my foot, but I did my best impression of what I thought my foot tracing would look like. So maybe for this one, I'll trace my hand just to show what tracing can look like. But you might think of something else that you would like to put on the front of your cover, like maybe your name, or maybe something that you really, really like a portrait of an animal that you really care about, or a poem that inspires you, or maybe it's a wish that you have for the world. I think that's another important part of climate change personally, is bringing your special, unique self into the work. I drew really, really wide around my fingers because I didn't want to get marker on my hand today, but you might decide that going closer is better for you. That's funny, a hand and a foot. Oh my goodness, we're doing such a great job. Okay, so next we have our paper, and Today I chose to use some paper that I haven't used yet. I thought it might be a little easier for us to see how to do this. But you might decide to use some paper that you've already drawn on, or maybe you even make your own paper. That's exciting too. I noticed that this paper is much wider than the cover of my journal. And again, maybe that's a choice that you would like to make, have some paper sticking out. That could be a fun stylistic choice. But I think for my sake, I'd like to fold my paper and see where that gets me. Let's see here. I'm going to show you how to tear your paper if you are ever in a situation where you need to tear some paper but you don't have scissors and you'd like a rather straight line. First you make a fold, and I like to use my fingernail to really make sure it's a strong fold. And then I open it up, and then I fold it the opposite way. Again, using my fingernails, make it a really tight fold. And sometimes I'll even do it a third time, back the first way. And then I'm going to put my hand on one side and gently pull away the other side. Wow, I did such a good job. That's great. Okay, I have my 2 pages here. Let's start with that. I'm going to put them overlapping with the hole of my journal, so it will be easier for me to safely put a hole in the paper. So I put my cover down first, and then I put my paper. There we go. Poke it through. My fingers were not in the way, you can see. And then I turn the scissors to make a hole. Yes, we did it. Oh my goodness, this is great. I've never seen a journal like this before. It's unique, one of a kind. And now it's time for us to pick some wire to keep it all together. Ooh, I like this purple one. I think this came from a bunch of broccoli. Amazing. So now I'm going to put, first I put my journal cover, and then I put my pages, just like that. You can notice the hole on the page is not a perfect circle. That's fine with me. Really, what I most like about this journal is that I'm finding a creative reuse for some things that will help me become better at being a climate action hero, because this tool that we just made is going to help us keep track of our carbon footprint, which is an important step to taking action to help the climate. Look at that. Oh my goodness, yes. Fantastic. I love it. And I just twisted this twisty tie, and I could even hang this at home if I wanted to. I could hang it on a hook, maybe on a cabinet or on a hanger in my closet, so that I could put it someplace where I see it every day. And now that we have our climate action carbon footprint journal, we are ready to start noticing some things that we should keep track of. Okay. What are some of the things that we can keep track of in our carbon footprint journal? Well, let's pay attention to how long we keep the lights on at home. And maybe let's also notice how many times we open the refrigerator. What's another way we bring electricity inside or use energy? Ooh, what about transportation? How many times are we going on the bus or in a car? Something that uses fossil fuels. If we were to take a walk, maybe somebody who gets pushed in a stroller, or you use a wheelchair that doesn't have electricity, or you're on a bicycle that doesn't use electricity, or skateboard, or rollerblades, or you're dancing down the street. Those things don't use electricity, so they're not going to be included in our carbon footprint journal transportation section. We're just going to be talking about transportation that uses electricity. Let's think of one more. What about how many times we leave the faucet running while we're brushing our teeth? So it takes electricity to power and pump the water through our homes. If you're in San Francisco, like I am right now, then your water comes from, do you know where it comes from? It comes from the Yosemite Valley. So it has traveled a long way to make it to you in your home. And there's a lot of energy that goes into getting it there. So you can actually save a little bit of energy every single day, every time you brush your teeth. Just turn that faucet off and wait till you're ready to use the water again. So we have 4 examples here of what we can keep track of at home. And I'm going to make some columns. So I'm going to challenge you to do this for 1 week. Pick 4 things that you'll keep track of for 7 days. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. Okay. So I made 7 columns and 4 rows for my 4 categories. We're going to keep track of how many hours we have the lights on. So maybe on, let's see, I put letters for the days of the week on top to help me. So starting on Monday, maybe I notice that we have the lights on for 6 hours. Maybe I notice on Tuesday we have the lights on for 7 hours. Maybe on Wednesday it's 5 hours. So I can keep track. Then how many times do I open the fridge? Well, maybe for this I'll use a tally mark instead. So for tally marks, you make a vertical line every time something happens once. If it happens twice, 3 times, 4 times, but when it happens the 5th time, you draw a diagonal line across. So when I see a little bunch like that, I know that it's 5. And then when that 5 is full, I start another tally. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if this were accurately showing how many times we open the fridge on Monday, that would be 10 times because I see 2 groups of 5 tally marks. We can do the same for transportation. I'll use a different color in case it's easier for us to understand the contrast. So let's say on Monday, we actually didn't use any fossil fuel transportation at all. We didn't use a car, we didn't go on the bus, we didn't use an electric scooter, nothing that used electricity or fossil fuels. So maybe I'll put an X on that day. That's great. No impact on the climate to use 0 fossil fuel transportation. But on Tuesday, let's say we take 1 ride on the bus to go to the grocery store, and then 1 ride on the bus to come back. So then there's 2 tally marks there. Now you'll want to keep track for yourself which rows you're using tally marks for and which one you're writing the numerals on, because later I might look at this and think, I went on transportation 11 times? That doesn't sound right. So this is a good time for you to practice these skills and to also keep track of what's important to you. What about the faucet while brushing our teeth? Let's see. Maybe this is a yes/no answer. Did I leave the faucet on while brushing my teeth today? And if I didn't, well, I guess I phrased it here, was the faucet on while brushing teeth? If I did, you can do a check mark. I did, but maybe I didn't on this day. And maybe I didn't on this day. Wow, 2 days in a row, I remembered to turn the faucet off while I was brushing my teeth. That's great. So once you have your full week of your your carbon footprint assessment, you can take note of what was really easy to do, what was sort of a stretch, and what was super, super hard to do. And you can identify what are some things that you can continue to improve for the next week. What are some ways you can use your carbon footprint journal to keep improving and learning more about how you use energy that impacts our climate? Here are some other things that you might not have thought of that use energy and electricity in your home and in your neighborhood. Remembering to unplug things that you are not using when they're not in use. If you have items that, for example, are charging in the wall, but you're not charging them at the moment, there's a small, consistent amount of electricity going into that charger and into the charging cord. So your phone, your tablet, your computer, different chargers for, your electric scooter or your headphones. If those things are not being actively charged, you should remember to unplug the chargers as well, and you can save electricity every day. Another thing you can do to make a positive impact on the climate and reduce your overall carbon footprint is to think about your community. What are some ways that we can decrease the amount of carbon that we're using as a community? Maybe you get to know your neighbors and see if you can help them with their groceries or take turns. Maybe there's ways that you can take a new way to go to school that uses less energy. Maybe there's a way that you can invent a new fun game with your friends that doesn't require electricity. Now, the great thing is there are lots of ways that we can connect with each other at this time, but not all of them need fossil fuels or energy. So I challenge you as creative thinkers to come up with your own inventions for how to reduce your carbon footprint. And remember, talking to your friends and classmates and teachers and loved ones at home is another great way to think creatively. And on a larger scale, a lot of the decisions about how energy gets to our home is made at the state level. So if you're interested in making sure that the state of California has more renewable energy as opposed to fossil fuel energy, you can do some research to find out which elected officials you can get in touch with, because it is their job to listen to your concerns and to help make choices that are good for our communities. So I challenge you, as you think creatively about reusing materials in your home and reducing your waste, as you think about your own personal impact at home, and as you think about our impact as a community, I challenge you to also find a way to take care of yourself during this time too. The same way that we were safe with our scissors when we were making this journal, there are so many amazing ways that we can care for ourselves and show appreciation that will give us energy that require no fossil fuels at all. So let's take another deep breath together in gratitude to give ourselves some energy, and thank yourself for taking this time to be with me here. Wonderful. Thank you so much, friends, for tuning in today, learning about how to make a carbon footprint journal. We learned about how carbon is one of the building blocks of life on our planet. We learned about a little bit about carbon cycling, and we learned about creative reuse so that we can track our own habits and make a positive impact while we connect with others. Join us at YMCASF.org/classrooms4all to find out more about amazing opportunities to learn together. My name is Reesha. Thank you so much, and I'll see you again soon.
Did you know that YMCA of San Francisco never closed? When shelter-in-place happened, we could no longer provide in-person programming. We quickly shifted to provide youth and family programming virtually. As early as April, we started providing on-demand activities in our YMCA of San Francisco YouTube channel.
For this video, we're going to be making a geodesic dome.
Today, we're going to be making a hovercraft. The science around this activity is really awesome.
In addition, we have a regular schedule of activities for our youth and families to join live. We feature read-alouds, yoga, family Zumba, arts and crafts, drawing clubs, and more. So don't miss out on our virtual youth and family offerings. Visit www.ymcasf.org for more info and class schedules.